Until 1975, scientists worldwide thought carbon dioxide from fossil fuel combustion is the main source of global warming. In 1975, I published a major discovery that there are gases other than carbon dioxide which are contributing to climate change, even more potent. That particular work showed chlorofluorocarbons, or CFCs, used as refrigerants were about 10,000 times more potent than carbon dioxide in causing climate change. That opened the door for discovery of various other pollutants and gases we are putting into the planet, which was warming the climate. And now our understanding is that gases other than carbon dioxide are contributing as much as 40% to the climate change we are experiencing. About 10 years ago, one more non-CO2 pollutant was brought to the front page, and this is not a gas, but it's a particle, a black carbon soot particle. My own work using drone aircraft like these and satellites showed this black carbon or soot from diesel combustion and other burning practices going on is the second largest contributor to global warming. So to put this all together, carbon dioxide is still the major contributor to climate change, but we have these other pollutants which are also contributing to global warming. Yes, we already know now pollutants other than carbon dioxide are having a major impact on current climate change. That's the bad news. The good news is these other climate pollutants are giving us a new opportunity to rapidly bring down global warming in the next 30 years. So what are these other pollutants? Methane, it's from a part of natural gas, is a greenhouse gas. Ozone, which is a tropospheric pollutant in the first 10 kilometers. And the third is hydrofluorocarbons, HFCs. And the CFCs, chlorofluorocarbons, because of their effect on the ozone layer, were replaced by HFCs. These hydrofluorocarbons, which is part of the family of halocarbons, is another potent greenhouse gas. So these four pollutants, which we call them short-lived climate pollutants because their lifetime is much smaller, or 10 years or less, compared with the century to 1,000 years lifetime of carbon dioxide. So we have technologies to bring them down. And what I've shown is that we need two levers to bend the curve of climate change. The first lever, of course, is carbon dioxide. And that's the focus of all major policy actions, including the recently concluded Paris Summit. So we have to pull the CO2 lever down to bring climate change. But because of its lifetime, we are not going to see much effect from that in the next 30 years. Fortunately, we have the second lever, the short-lived climate pollutants, that's methane, ozone, hydrofluorocarbons, these are the greenhouse gases, and black carbon. We have technologies to bring them down rapidly. So by pulling the second lever down, we can cut the climate change over the next 30 years by almost 50%. So we have two levers, one to bring the long-term climate change down, and the second lever to bring down the warming rapidly. So let's talk about my work with the Vatican and about briefing Pope Francis in person about climate change. I was elected to the Pontifical Academy of Sciences 10 years ago by Pope St. John Paul II. And over the last 10 years, I had teamed up with my other colleagues, organized a series of meetings on climate change, and that culminated in 2014 in a workshop called Sustainable Nature, Sustainable Humanity, Our Responsibility. This was personally approved by Pope Francis. We brought thought leaders from around the world, and our fundamental conclusion was climate change has become a major moral issue. At the end of this 3-day workshop in May, I had the privilege of taking our team of scientists to meet Pope Francis and brief him. So I basically told him that climate change has become a major issue all of us are worried about. And the second thing I pointed out is that most of the climate pollution is from the top 1 billion people. But the worst consequences of climate change are going to be experienced by the poorest 3 billion who are still struggling with 18th century technologies because they can't afford to access these fuels. I was surprised. Pope Francis listened patiently, intently, and then asked in Spanish, what can he do about this? So I expressed my wish to him that in his speeches, if he can please include climate change and ask people to be better stewards of the planet. I must say that while we have struggled with getting public action on climate change over the last 30 years at least, Pope Francis's speeches on climate change and Laudato Si, his encyclical, and his concern for the poor has had a huge impact on scientists, on policy leaders. His speech was mentioned at the Paris Summit and in public opinion. For nearly 30 to 40 years, science and policy, or scientists and political leaders, have worked together to alert people about the seriousness of climate change and the need for taking actions. As we all know, we have not been able to take much action because of lack of public support. And this is where I think an alliance between science, religion, and policy can have a huge transformative effect on the public. Why? Because we have delayed actions on climate change has become a huge moral ethical issue. What are the moral and ethical issues? I already mentioned the emissions comes from the rich or top 1 billion. And the worst consequences of the climate change is going to be experienced by the poor, who number close to 3 billion. And the second the changes which are going to happen, such as sea level rise, melting of the glaciers, are going to last for centuries. So we are impacting generations who are still not born. Scientists or even political leaders don't have the authority to talk about moral, ethical issues, but religion has. And after all, what are we asking people to do? Change their behavior and change our attitude towards each other and towards nature, and think about protecting Mother Nature. On that, all religions agree on that. So we have one issue, the environment, in which scientists, political leaders, and religious leaders can come together. So let's talk about the Paris Climate Summit, which concluded in December of 2015. I attended the Paris Summit as a science advisor to the delegation of the Holy See. That summit concluded with a document, let's say a piece of paper, that is agreed upon by all the participating nations, numbering over 140. I consider that document as the singular most important document on our relationship with nature. And it specifically called for limiting climate change well below this dangerous threshold of 2-degree warming. But that's just the first step. We need to take that document and articulate a strategy, a workable strategy of how to bring global warming down. So the document mentions is bringing down carbon dioxide emissions, which is from fossil fuel combustion. I completely agree with that. But my work shows that by itself is not enough to stop or slow down the warming. We need to bring down 4 other pollutants, short-lived climate pollutants, which are methane, ozone, hydrofluorocarbons, and then black carbon. We need to bring them down. We have technologies to bring them down. And if we do that in the next 10 years, we can slow down the warming over the next 30 years by 50%. And that's one of the main reasons, the urgency of the problem. I'm personally gratified and very excited about this award, that it gives me the forum and the opportunity to bring this 2-part solution to the attention of the world.